Ever since the muscle car craze began in the 1960s, we've seen countless brands like Dodge unleash their creativity and ingenuity in a bid to dominate the muscle car market. However, while a few muscle cars have stunned car enthusiasts and still remain a favorite till today, there are some that are just so bad you'd want to spit on them. Here are 10 ugliest Dodge muscle cars in history. 10. 1962 Dodge Dart. If there's one muscle car that probably made it to the production lines by mistake, it was the Dodge Dart. Merely looking at this car from the front, you'd agree it looked ugly. Truth is, Dodge actually decided to experiment with this design, but it ended up being a total flop. Not even the 415 horsepower V8 engines or 100 miles per hour top speed could convince car lovers to fall in love with this car, as only 153,145 units were sold. Just so you know, this car's price wasn't too expensive, as a brand new one at the time cost about $1,900, a fair price for a muscle car back in the day. Dodge actually had high hopes for this car, as it was made in 3 trim levels and 6 body styles. However, the design was just too ugly for any of these stylings to make much of a difference. The salvation for the Dart came in 1963, when the company redesigned the car to give it a more conventional look. Soon it became a strong competitor in the muscle car market at the time. Speaking of muscle cars that were strong competitors during their prime, Dodge Challenger sits at the top of the list. That's until they made the mistake of producing the ugliest car within the series. 9. 1978 Dodge Challenger. The 1978 Dodge Challenger was a letdown in the long lineup of awesome Dodge Challenger muscle cars. The compact coupe had little to write home about compared to its older brother. The car was lighter, smaller, and less powerful than its predecessor. However, most of all, it was a very ugly car. First, it was the old school, rectangular headlights stuck on the old-fashioned bumpers. Next was the notchback roofline, and then finally it was the bland colors. Surely you'd think that even if Dodge failed in any other aspect of this car, they wouldn't fail in the aspect of visual appeal. But then, things only got worse when it came to this aspect, as the 1978 Challenger had very dull colors and a very boring interior. The interior featured a basic dashboard and upholstery, a simple steering wheel, and pretty much nothing exciting or visually appealing to either driver or passenger. It was quite shocking, to say the least. However, what shocked Dodge fans the most about this car was the dreadful specs. Despite the fact that Dodge produced this car in a variety of engine options, it could only produce between 77 and 105 horsepower. Needless to say, fans were disappointed because the car was ugly both on the inside and outside. However, this next car was not only a disappointment to the customers, but to the company itself. 8. 1982 Dodge Charger. There was indeed a compact Dodge Charger that year. This version was a significant departure from the iconic muscle car that enthusiasts have since revered. Based on the Dodge Omni platform, the variant of the Charger was a much smaller hatchback-style vehicle, typical of the compact cars of that era. With just 82 horsepower, it was a far cry from the powerful engines that defined earlier Chargers. So the 1982 Dodge Charger design and performance focused on fuel efficiency and sharper acceleration, distinguishing it from the muscle car legacy of its predecessors. But despite its practicality, the shift to a smaller, less powerful model was a tough sell for traditional Dodge enthusiasts. The hatchback design of the Charger was a dime a dozen at the time. It featured a more practical build, and irrespective of its modest power, the Charger boasted a surprisingly good off-the-line performance, often outperforming contemporary rivals like the Camaro and the Mustang in initial acceleration. However, for many Dodge enthusiasts, the transformation of the Charger into an Omni clone was difficult to accept. The drastic shift from a robust muscle car to a compact economy vehicle felt like a betrayal of the Charger's heritage. Despite these sentiments, this version of the Dodge Charger remains a notable chapter in automotive history, reflecting the industry's response to changing consumer demands and economic conditions. So our list is about ugly cars, right? Well, this next one was designed in collaboration with a legendary car artist, Carroll Shelby. Did that change anything? Let's see. 7. Dodge Shelby CSX. The Dodge Shelby CSX was an intriguing chapter in automotive history, blending the pedigree of Shelby performance with the practicality of the Dodge Shadow. introduced in the late 1980s, the CSX was a product of Chrysler's decision to transform the standard Shadow Compact into a sporty, limited edition model under the Shelby nameplate. The Dodge Shelby CSX, a product of transforming the Dodge Shadow into a sporty Shelby model, has become a sought-after collector's car. Though its performance was modest, the unique styling and Shelby nameplate make it a notable collectible. Its origins as a Dodge Shadow may be puzzling, but its rarity and distinctive look have cemented its place in automotive history. However, many enthusiasts disagree with this appraisal, and the argument is still ongoing on whether this hybrid design deserves a place amongst the great muscle car marquees. At best, its rarity and the association with Carroll Shelby lend it a unique allure. But when it comes to performance, the CSX did not deliver jaw-dropping numbers on the track. The performance was merely modest, reflecting the limitations of its Shadow underpinnings. Yet the styling of the Shelby CSX set it apart from the standard Shadow. It featured distinctive controls and a sporty aesthetic that hinted at a better driving experience. Underneath the hood, the car is still borrowed from the Shadow model. To be fair, the original Dodge Shadow itself was not particularly remarkable, which makes Chrysler's choice of it as a foundation for the Shelby makeover somewhat confusing. Ultimately, the Dodge Shelby CSX blend of Shelby styling and Dodge practicality makes it an interesting, albeit modest, chapter in the Shelby legacy. But how about our next muscle car on this list? It was built to be pocket-friendly? You'd agree that's already a setup for disaster. 6. Dodge Daytona. The Dodge Daytona was introduced as an affordable alternative to the higher-end Stealth. It came in various models, with the Shelby and IROC versions being particularly appealing. Despite these variants, the Daytona was often underpowered and had a common design. Its affordability, however, made it an accessible choice for buyers wanting a sporty look without the high cost. So while Dodge already offered the higher-end Stealth, they needed a more budget-friendly option, which led to the introduction of the Daytona. Despite all its interesting variants, the Daytona struggled to distinguish itself in terms of unique features. It was designed to be an economical sports car, which unfortunately often translated to poor performance compared to its competitors. The design of the Daytona was fairly standard, lacking the standout features that characterized some of its peers. The only good thing it had going for it was the appeal of its Shelby and IROC models. Otherwise, the overall output and power left much to be desired. Looking back now, some would have suggested the design looked like a spaceship, or rather a flying saucer on wheels. And we think we agree. The artist was trying too hard to capture the essence of sporting car marquees of the era, but failed woefully and got his aerodynamic alignment wrong. However, in the end, the Dodge Daytona served as a more economical sports car option in the Dodge lineup. So you could rightfully say, the Daytona's legacy was a mix of affordability in addition to the allure of its collectible models. But Dodge had other collectible models that touched down just this side of being ugly, depending on the individual who was buying, of course. 5. Dodge Avenger. The 1990s, Dodge Avenger, not to be confused with the movie franchise, was based on the Chrysler Sebring, and the archives suggest that it featured unique styling that set it apart. However, its performance was unremarkable, essentially being a Sebring coupe with a Dodge grille. This led to a lot of disappointment and dissatisfaction, as buyers paid a premium for a sporty appearance without enhanced performance. It just so happens that in the 1990s, Dodge introduced a variety of two-door cars, and the Dodge Avenger was one of the more notable entries. Unlike other cars on the market at the time, its styling was divisive. Pictures from the year '94 seem to suggest its design was, at best, basic or at worst, misleading. At the time, it looked like a wannabe luxury car in hindsight, and so consequently, it cost an arm and a leg. But it gets worse, because it was a bad bargain all round. And here is why. When it came to performance, the Avenger didn't quite live up to expectations. Essentially, between the Sebring and Dodge Alta Egos, it offered the same driving experience under the sporty exterior as its Chrysler counterpart, which was disappointing to say the least. Worse still is it lacked the performance enhancements to justify its premium price tag. Sadly, this was a common issue for many Chrysler products of that era. Despite these shortcomings, the Avenger nameplate was revived later with a new sedan model, aiming to bring a fresh perspective to the market. This revival sought to improve upon the legacy of the original Avenger, offering better performance and modern features. So in summary, the incarnation of this Dodge Avenger was a coupe which, while distinct, offered unremarkable performance. So it seems you can't have it both ways, and that is generally the thrust of our story today. Just as the next model is simply one more ugly car too many. 4. The 1983 Dodge Shelby Charger. The Dodge Shelby Charger was a notable modification of the standard Charger model, focusing on enhancements to suspension and styling rather than sheer speed. Remember, we had yet another Charger released in 1982 on this list. So this collaboration with legendary car designer Carroll Shelby aimed to boost the car's performance and appeal a little more. Key updates included stronger brakes and a quicker power steering rack, which collectively improved handling and driving dynamics. By 1984, the engine output had increased to 110 horsepower, offering modest power boosts over the original model. Despite these upgrades on the Dodge Shelby Edition Charger, its angular, toy-like appearance and lackluster appeal made it an unattractive option for many, leaving it a polarizing and often overlooked model from the 80s. Essentially, you either loved it or you hated it. To be sure, the Shelby Charger's appearance left much to be desired. The wedgy features and basic visual appeal made enthusiasts and casual observers alike think twice about acquiring it. Most people often found the design unattractive. It was certainly a significant departure from the bold, aggressive aesthetics typically associated with muscle cars. So thanks but no thanks, Carroll Shelby. And while the Shelby Charger may have offered some performance enhancements, its visual shortcomings made it a less desirable option in the used car market. The car's styling, which was meant to be modern and sporty, failed to resonate with many buyers, relegating it to the sidelines of automotive history, or worse yet, to the scrapyard. Even though the 1983 Dodge Shelby Charger brought notable improvements in handling and modest power increases, its design failed to capture the classic muscle car essence. This has left it as a divisive relic of that decade, often overlooked by collectors and enthusiasts. And speaking of year-on-year segues, we have this one up next. 3. Dodge Magnum. Following on the heels of the release of the Intrepid during the previous year, Dodge introduced the Magnum, and it generated significant initial excitement as a bold entry into the wagon market. Featuring a powerful Hemi V8 engine, the Magnum had no option but to offer impressive performance. Undoubtedly, launching a wagon was a bold move for Dodge, but it initially paid off, with the Magnum becoming a hot seller. Over time, however, sales began to decline, leading to the eventual discontinuation of the model. But despite the decline, it remains popular in the used car market for its performance and design. And in keeping with our theme, some might consider it ugly too, and here's why. It was simply a wagon trying to be cool. Also, it looked like a low-riding SUV. As mentioned earlier, one of the standout features of the 2005 Dodge Magnum was its Hemi V8 engine option. Furthermore, at a time when many automakers had moved away from wagons, Dodge's decision to equip the Magnum with robust V8 power was a notable gamble. This engine choice provided impressive performance and helped the Magnum carve out a niche in the market. But despite its initial success, the Magnum struggled to maintain its momentum. However, its powerful engine has managed to keep it relevant in the game of used cars. The design of the Magnum, with its distinctive and sporty look, also makes it an appealing option for car enthusiasts who enjoy customizing and building on its unique foundation. While the Magnum had its critics and was considered by some to be one of the less successful Dodge models, its combination of wagon practicality and muscle car performance has since given it a lasting appeal among certain buyers. And that is irrespective of the fact that its popularity has waned over time. But switching tack, we now dare to ask, what is a muscle car if it can't hit the racetrack? So here's one for you. 2. Dodge Intrepid RT. The Dodge Intrepid RT was introduced with fanfare in partnership with NASCAR, but it featured a quirky design and lacked performance upgrades. Sorry, but that sounds like the beginning of bad news. So without a V8 engine or significant enhancements, it disappointed fans and had lackluster sales. And in spite of its appearance, the Intrepid RT failed to stand out. In fact, it looked like an alien on second thought. The Dodge Intrepid RT was introduced as a sports sedan, Apparently, the Intrepid RT generated a lot of excitement upon its debut. But unfortunately, it didn't deliver anything more substantial enough to talk about, and that was a big bummer. Despite the sporty branding, the Intrepid RT lacked any substantial performance upgrades to qualify as a muscle car. It didn't feature a V8 engine of all things, which was a disappointment for those expecting more power and speed. The differences between the RT and the standard Intrepid were minimal, limited to a rear deck lid and an upgraded set of wheels. And this lack of meaningful enhancements left many fans feeling let down. But ultimately, the car's performance was adequate, but it didn't live up to the high expectations set by its association with NASCAR. So what was the point to all the hype? Whatever the case, the absence of significant mechanical improvements meant that the Intrepid RT didn't stand out in a crowded market of sports sedans. Consequently, sales were underwhelming, and the model failed to make a lasting impact. In the end, the Dodge Intrepid RT fell short in terms of performance. It lacked the power and unique features that could have made it a standout sports sedan. As a result, it remains a less celebrated part of Dodge's otherwise impressive lineup. But with a name like our next model, you'd have thought there was always something more to be expected from the automobile manufacturer in the muscle car department. Could they at least save themselves with this last one? 1. 1983 Dodge Rampage. Bet you didn't know, Dodge had their own version of the El Camino. That's right, it was called the Rampage. Introduced that year, the Rampage was Dodge's attempt to enter the car-based pickup market, blending the functionality of a truck with the maneuverability of a compact car. However, its underpowered four-cylinder engine raised eyebrows, as it was not ideally suited for a pickup truck. Obviously, the 1983 Dodge Rampage wasn't really ideal for heavy-duty tasks, though its bed was practical for light cargo. The Rampage's design was controversial, and its versatility was questioned by the automotive press. Amongst other things, they wondered whether the Rampage could truly meet the demands of truck buyers. But that aside, it has remained a strange-looking oddity from Chrysler's design era, famous for its distinctive concept. But to be honest, it looks like a life-size boxcar. The design of the Rampage was definitely controversial upon its release. As a compact car-based pickup truck, it stood out in a segment that typically favored more robust vehicles. There were certainly better alternatives available on the market at the time, which overshadowed the Rampage. Despite these challenges, the Rampage has since become a curious relic. Its unique concept and distinctive appearance have garnered a niche following among collectors and enthusiasts who cite its inevitable place in automotive history, whether ugly or not. The Dodge Rampage was a bold and unconventional entry into the car-based pickup segment, and we can also attest to the fact that its peculiar design has ensured its place as a memorable, if not quirky, piece of Dodge's history. So with that, it's a wrap. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed our video, you can also check out this next one right here. Or better yet, you could hit that like button and also subscribe to our channel. Cheers.